The story begins in a frozen land, a place where snow rains all year round, the very center of the world, where monsters lurk among the icy plains. A white dragon flicked its long tongue endlessly, while a pale serpent swallowed entire glaciers whole. A white bear bared its razor-sharp fangs. As a gray bear brought forth earthquakes with its steps. Even a colossal rat could not resist joining in, a vile creature that polluted the vast oceans. Suddenly, a king appeared with fear etched across his face. Yet an emperor, one who had once survived the deadly frozen wastes, had spoken of this place long ago. And as if that were not enough, there was also a mysterious figure here, proof that the most terrifying thing in this land was not the monsters themselves. From the endless snows came a dreadful sound, the voice of the frozen wastes. A girl fearlessly hurled herself toward a massive crab before her. The very next instant, an explosion shook the ground beneath the thick layers of snow. A giant hand clamped down on the crab's black claw. The owner of that hand was Greta, who poured all his strength into butchering the beast before him. Out of nowhere, a foot appeared before Greta's eyes. The crab trembled violently at the sight of the man who had arrived. His hand tightened firmly around the weapon he held. In the blink of an eye, Kettle had dispatched the creature with a single slash. Greta, delighted with the spoils, carried his trophy away, only to leave Kettle staring in disbelief. He muttered with bitter contempt, "Damn half-demons. Always wearing their stupidity like a badge of honor." Kettle's gaze drifted forward as he mumbled under his breath, "How much longer do I have to put up with these blockheads?" But his words did not go unheard. The girl beside him perked up and asked, "What is stupidity? Can you eat it?" Helpless, he sighed and waved it off. "Forget it." A heartbeat later, she was already feasting happily on the black crab. Even Greta, standing nearby, was no less eager in devouring the creature. Then a cold, cutting voice sliced through the moment, halting them in their tracks. "I told you clearly before, eat it and you will die." Kettle stood there with a grave expression, emphasizing his words again. "It has not even been a week, and you have already devoured everything." The girl stammered nervously at first. "No, it is just." But then a mischievous grin spread across her face. She declared, that was a challenge worthy of respect. Her words left Kettle dumbfounded. "You are calling that a compliment?" he asked, almost in disbelief. But before anything more could be said, Greta's face suddenly turned pale. His eyes rolled back grotesquely, foam bubbled at his lips, and his pupils turned stark white. Clutching his throat in agony, Greta collapsed in convulsions. Kettle fell into grim silence, while the girl beside them screamed in panic. "Greta, what is wrong with you? Wake up." Kettle's expression grew darker, shadowed with unease. Behind him, the girl continued to cry out in desperation, her voice breaking, "Wake up, Greta, get up, please." But none of it seemed to matter to him. Without looking back, Kettle turned and walked away, muttering under his breath, "This is not what I wanted." Everything had begun long ago, back when Kettle first stepped out into the wider world. "I had once longed to set foot in a realm of fantasy, a world brimming with wonders and magic. I quit my job, traveled, climbed the tallest mountain on earth. I journeyed alone to places where the sunsets painted the sky in breathtaking colors, even to the very core of the planet. I went to lands where radiant moons hung in the heavens. And I set foot at the southernmost point of the world. For a long time, I never stopped praying for it. Of course, nothing ever happened. Reality was so far removed from fantasy that it felt hopeless. Still, every night, I prayed that when I awoke, I would find myself in a world of magic. And then, one day, my prayers were finally answered. Somewhere across the frozen wastelands, a caravan pressed onward. Suddenly, a disgruntled voice cut through the air. "Damn it, it is freezing out here." The owner of that commanding voice was a young man with golden hair, the leader of the group. He barked, "If you do not want to die, put on another fur coat." Immediately, the long-haired young man beside him answered hurriedly, forcing a strained smile, "I already did." Then another, a short-haired youth, interjected, "Captain, no matter how great the reward is, this is suicide. Crossing the frozen wastes, you have lost your mind." Faced with the boy's rebuke, the captain's tone hardened. "Quiet." Everyone agreed to this. That reply left the boy flustered. He grumbled, trying to dodge the matter. "We did not know it would be this bad. Damn it, it is so cold." All of a sudden, a faint noise came from a white-haired man sitting inside one of the wagons. He drew a deliberate breath, then turned to his master with deep respect. "Are you all right, my lady?" The young woman before him answered gracefully. She was a radiant girl with a warm smile, Mylena of the Kashi family. Her gentle voice rang out, "I am fine." But before her words could settle, a scream pierced the air. "Damn it, I am freezing to death." The white-haired man inside the carriage barked furiously, "You crude fools." Mylena's gaze drifted outward at the men, her expression calm as she spoke in a steady tone. "Don't be so harsh. They are the only ones who agreed to protect us across the frozen wastes." But her demeanor faltered when her eyes fell upon something. Her voice softened, heavy with concern. "Still, should not we bring her inside now? She is frozen stiff." Outside, the others continued to struggle against the relentless snowstorms, exhaustion etched deep into their faces. The white-haired man seemed to read Mylena's unspoken thoughts. He quickly raised a hand, shaking his head. "No, you know what lurks out there on the frozen wastes." Hearing this, Mylena lowered her head, her voice trembling with unease. "Monsters, is not that right?" This called to mind the tale of a sovereign, a king above all. It was said that long ago, an emperor with a burning desire to seize the world had once set his sights on conquering the frozen wastes. To achieve this, he led forth every last one of his mighty soldiers. A cavalry unit, fully armed and provisioned, set out on a campaign into the frozen wastes. They marched with determination, but though many had departed, only the king himself returned. By then, his body was frail and his appearance haggard beyond recognition. A few years later, the empire collapsed and faded into obscurity. And the emperor was believed to have vanished forever. Yet one day, he returned. His soldiers were gone, his empire had crumbled, only a broken, withered body remained. He seemed overwhelmed with regret, tears of anguish streaming ceaselessly down his face. He had aged decades in a short time. And his speech was the rambling of a madman. He declared, "There are monsters in the frozen wastes. But the most terrifying thing there is not the monsters." In his memories, the image of Kettle surfaced again and again. Had the man become an obsession? A phantom etched deep into the emperor's mind. The true horror, the emperor insisted, was the barbarians. And their Kettle stood, cold and unyielding, indifferent to the turning of fate. They were here. Back in the present, the white-haired man tried to soothe Mylena. It must only be a legend. But his words did little to dispel her unease. Mylena's voice was soft yet firm as she replied, "Still, what the emperor said was not baseless. Many of the creatures he described were eventually discovered." The white-haired man gave a sudden laugh, almost dismissive. "And yet, no one has ever claimed to see these so-called barbarians." No matter how much he tried to comfort her, Mylena could not shake her sadness. Slowly, she whispered, "That is true." And in her heart, a troubling thought persisted despite countless tales of adventure passed down through the years. Not a single record ever mentioned the barbarians. Outside, a voice suddenly rang out, halting every step in the snow. All of them stopped at once. It was the captain. His face had turned strikingly serious. His sharp gaze fixed on the distance. "Something's out there," he warned. The long-haired youth beside him panicked. "What is it?" The captain's brow furrowed as he peered into the hazy veil of drifting snow, clearly weighing his next move. Through the blur of the blizzard, a shadow began to take shape, drawing his focus. He muttered under his breath, "I can't see it clearly." Then his eyes widened, shock freezing him in place for a heartbeat too long. His voice wavered, tight with unease. "I have got good news and bad news." The long-haired youth paled, stammering in fear. "Damn it, we are finished." The captain spoke coldly. "The good news is it is small. The bad news is—" The shadow ahead grew clearer as it advanced, step by step. His voice cracked with growing tension. "It is coming toward us." Panic rippled through the group, their nerves unraveling in the howling winds. Mylena lifted her head without realizing it, her wide eyes transfixed on the sight beyond the carriage. Even the white-haired man could not hide his astonishment as he twisted around to look. The captain's hand instinctively gripped the hilt of his sword. His fearful gaze betrayed the truth. Whatever was approaching was no ordinary being. He muttered as the figure drew closer, "A person." A blast of wind tore across the snowfield, whipping the platinum hair of Kettle into the air. With each step forward, his solid, powerful frame came into view. Kettle's commanding presence loomed tall before them, his very bearing radiating an undeniable aura. The sight alone left the group paralyzed in fear, frozen in place. Then, a voice broke the silence, a barbarian. Kettle's eyes, sharp and brimming with killing intent, swept across the crowd. Standing firm and unshaken, he spoke with deliberate calm. I could not bear the sight of other barbarians. So I stepped out for a walk. His words released the tension in the others' chests, and some even sighed in relief. What a relief, they murmured. Suddenly, a sly, self-satisfied smile spread across Kettle's face. His tone shifted, laced with excitement. To think I would encounter outsiders here. In the frozen wastes. What a pleasure. Kettle of the Ashen Barbarians. But then, something caught his eye, their cargo. His expression shifted to surprise. Are you merchants? He asked. The answer came swiftly, yes. Hearing that, Kettle tilted his head with feigned suspicion. So, you are mercenaries escorting a caravan, are not you? Caught off guard, the captain answered almost instinctively, that is right. This information seemed to deepen Kettle's thoughts. After a pause, he spoke gravely. I would advise you to turn back. Not that you will listen. The edge in his voice made the mercenaries uneasy. The captain's face stiffened, betraying his anxiety. Then Kettle's gaze sharpened as if he had realized something. Your employer is inside that carriage, is not she? His eyes locked onto the ornate vehicle. Inside, Mylena stiffened, her eyes widening in shock and dread. Outside, the captain trembled with suppressed anger, yet he made no move. Their silence only seemed to fuel Kettle's thrill. His lips curled into an eager grin. I would like to be hired too. Those words sent the group into disarray. The captain shouted in disbelief, what? Kettle remained calm, almost amused, as he countered. Did I not make myself clear? I want to help you cross the frozen wastes. The captain grew increasingly uneasy, his thoughts racing. Why would a legendary barbarian be asking for work? Could it really be that simple? Outwardly, however, he forced himself to remain composed. So, you have no hostile intentions. Kettle's answer was chilling in its simplicity. If I did, you would all be dead already. The atmosphere sank into a heavy silence in an instant. The captain and his men stiffened, their faces darkening with grim realization. The long-haired youth stammered softly, Captain. But the captain raised his arm slightly, deep in thought. His authoritative voice rang out, drawing Mylena's attention from inside the carriage. Did you hear that? She answered quickly, her tone subdued. I did. Meanwhile, the white-haired man seated at the front leaned closer, his voice tense with concern. What is happening? The captain's expression remained cold and composed as he laid it out. He wants to be hired as a mercenary. What will you do? Faced with such a dangerous proposition, Mylena's face darkened. For a moment, she had no idea how to respond. However, her next words made Kettle's expression darken with murderous intent. If we were to clash, what do you think would happen? She asked calmly. His reply was immediate and firm, I would not recommend it. That simple answer left Mylena silent for a moment. After regaining her composure, she slowly spoke again. I understand. Tell him, we accept. The captain immediately responded, yes, my lady. Yet his feet did not move an inch. Only after a brief pause did he finally stand tall before Kettle, declaring with a resolute voice, you are hired. The words drew a satisfied smile from Kettle, but that smile quickly twisted into cold mockery. With a sarcastic tone, he remarked, that is very good news. The eerie shift in his demeanor unsettled everyone present. Faces stiffened, and fear flickered openly in their eyes. The only one who dared speak up was the captain, his voice sharp as he demanded, what do you mean? Kettle merely smirked at him in ridicule. Don't be afraid. You are just soldiers. I need to speak directly with your employer. His boldness made the mercenaries even warier. The captain did not forget to issue a warning. If you try anything. Kettle cut him off without hesitation. Careful now. With that, he strode past the captain, wearing a look of arrogant triumph across his striking features. The sight nearly made the long-haired youth collapse from fear. He stammered out, see Captain, are you sure it is safe to let him meet her? The captain replied grimly, our employer has already agreed. At that, the fur-cloaked mercenary spoke up hesitantly. Still, we are just hired swords. Shouldn't we? But before he could finish, Kettle's sharp voice cut through. What, him? Kettle continued forward without slowing, his entire frame radiating a suffocating killing intent. What nonsense are you spouting? At the same time, inside the lavish carriage, the white-haired man shouted in panic, "My lady, what are you doing?" In stark contrast to his terror, Mylena remained utterly composed, her tone soothing. "Calm yourself." But suddenly, a deep male voice rang out, halting even her movements. "May I come in?" In that instant, the black-haired man outside paled, his face drained of color from sheer fright. Meanwhile, Mylena forced an awkward smile and replied, "Please. Come in." Outside, Kettle's lips curled into a look of smug delight at hearing her answer. The Akasha family's butler was shivering uncontrollably from the cold. Kettle, however, stood with his arms folded across his chest, radiating unshakable confidence. He even reassured his potential employers with a calm tone. "Both of you, relax." Though doubt still lingered in their eyes, Kettle remained resolute. "I have no intention of harming you." But the old man refused to place even a shred of trust in him, spitting out, "Don't lie to us, monster." Mylena found herself at a loss for words as she stared at him, this legendary barbarian, standing right before her eyes. She composed herself and offered a polite greeting. "It is a pleasure to meet you." Kettle responded just as evenly, "And you as well." His gaze drifted toward the window before comparing it to the warmth inside the carriage. "Cozy in here, is not it? Strange, considering we are in the middle of this frozen wasteland." Mylena explained the difference with calm precision. "That is thanks to magic." Kettle feigned surprise, though he understood it better than anyone. "Ah, magic, of course. You know, this world." His words were no jest. For him, every phrase carried the weight of a warning. "As you both know, this land is perilous. Even with mercenaries guarding you, the chance of crossing safely is slim. That is why I will protect you." Mylena hung on every word that followed. Kettle's voice grew firm. "But I have one condition." The butler broke into a cold sweat despite the freezing air. Mylena asked the question he had been waiting for. "A condition? What is it you want?" Kettle cut straight to the point. He despised wasting words. "Knowledge. Information about the world beyond this icy tundra." His demand revealed his sharp mind. "The information you hold, that is what I want." Mylena stiffened at the request. "Knowledge of the world beyond the tundra." Kettle pressed his point. "This benefits you, not harms you. You lose nothing." She knew he was right. From the very start, they would had no real choice. With a reluctant sigh, Mylena conceded. "I understand." The butler froze where he stood. Kettle's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Good. Now, tell me your name." With practiced composure, she replied, "I am Mylena, of House Akasha." Kettle's expression brightened. "I am Kettle. It is a pleasure to work with you." Behind that introduction lay another truth, Kettle's fierce love for games. Once, he had longed for a world of fantasy. That longing had turned to shock the day he awoke to find himself reborn as a barbarian in the middle of the frozen wasteland. He had not had time to ask why. The memory still seared his heart. The only things here were the skin-splitting cold and hordes of vicious monsters. He had led a tribe through the snowfields, hunting for survival, gritting his teeth each day to endure. He had spent every ounce of strength just to stay alive. He no longer knew how much time had passed, years, decades perhaps. He had tried endlessly to escape the cursed tundra. Once, in a fit of frustration, he struck the ground with a furious punch. But then, the system appeared before him. A message read, "Mission incomplete. You may leave the tundra once the quest is fulfilled." That was when hope returned. The travelers who had wandered here gave him a chance, a glimpse of survival. Some unseen force kept him trapped. And when he had nearly resigned himself to despair, outsiders had somehow stumbled into this merciless land. He never understood why, but sometimes people from beyond did appear. He was still reeling when it struck him. The world beyond this tundra, the one he had always dreamed of, was real. A land of magic and wonder. A true fantasy world. That realization ignited him. He turned his fury against the monsters, no longer fighting merely to survive but to conquer. Quest 295. Hunt down the lizards within the time limit. He threw himself into the task, slaughtering beasts and clearing every mission handed to him, each one a step toward freedom. Quest 295, completed. Next quest loading, always with the hope that someday He would finally break free of this prison. Now, Kettle placed all of his remaining faith into Mylena's answer. Because as long as he was trapped in this frozen hell, the knowledge carried by those who came from outside was priceless beyond measure. He was secretly relieved when he compared the moment to his grim past. Most of the humans he had encountered until now either panicked and drew their blades or were half mad, raving like lunatics. But this time, finally, someone was actually willing to speak with him. How long had it been since he last conversed with a civilized person? He had spent all his days among crude barbarians. To be able to speak with someone refined felt almost like a balm to his spirit. Kettle cut straight to the point. You are transporting weapons, are not you? Mylena flinched slightly, but she answered honestly. Yes. How did you know? He revealed the clue that had given it away. I heard the clatter of steel inside the wagons. Hard not to notice. Her expression softened. I see. Kettle pressed further. So, there is a war outside, is not there? Her face lost the composure she had maintained before. Yes. The Empire and the Kingdom are at war. Kettle did not look the least bit surprised. I thought as much. The world beyond is not exactly peaceful either, then. Mylena's tone grew firm, as if speaking on behalf of those on the battlefield. No. The Empire is pressing hard with overwhelming numbers. But the Kingdom is not so easily subdued. Swordmasters and heroes are holding the border. Kettle's curiosity sharpened. Heroes, swordmasters, what kind of power do they wield? The question caught her off guard with its simplicity. You have never heard of mystic arts, Kettle. His reply carried a weary resignation. I have never set foot outside this place. Mylena hesitated. I do not know every detail, but... She began to explain as best she could. There is a force in this world called mystic arts. Only a rare few can sense or wield it, and those who can are granted one of 5 levels of power. First, there is level 3, those who can sense mystic arts. She continued carefully, making sure Kettle could follow. Then comes level 2. From level 2 upward, they can actually use mystic arts. Next is level 1. These are people who can shape mystic arts into mana or radiance, often manifesting as knights, sorcerers, or even spirits themselves. Mylena provided examples to make it clear. Beyond that, the levels become meaningless. There are beings who surpass all measure of human understanding. If they must be named, they are transcendents, those who can bend mystic arts at will, strong enough to tear the heavens apart. Swordmasters belong to this rank. Her voice brimmed with awe as she continued. And finally, there are the heroes. Monsters among men, far beyond mastery of mystic arts, powerful enough to sway the course of the entire world. A hero is a living legend. Every word was deliberate, cautious. The very fact that such powers were ranked and named was already proof of their might. Even a mere level 3 was considered a formidable force within a small domain. Kettle's eyes gleamed with yearning. I want to meet them. Mylena faltered. Kettle. The sun was shining right before his eyes, yet Kettle could not smile. He had lost track of how long he had been trapped here, fighting only to survive, inching closer to despair each day. The thought consumed him. All he knew was the frozen tundra, and that it lay at the heart of a greater fantasy world. Beyond it stretched the magical realm he had always dreamed of. And he needed to escape. At last, a smile touched his lips. No, I will escape. I swear it. From inside the carriage, Mylena's voice called out. Kettle, you are a barbarian, are not you? He remained calm. You could say that. Judging by your expressions, you already know of my existence, do not you? She nodded. Yes, you are a legend. He blinked, genuinely surprised. A legend, about me. Her bewilderment showed. You do not know. It took him a long moment to remember the old man he had once met. So that is what that was. That old emperor. That was who he was. I thought he was just a crazy fool. Then his tone shifted, half warning, half dismissive. No, don't worry about it. The legend is real. It happened long ago. Mylena tilted her head, intrigued. Is that so? Kettle narrowed his eyes, suspicious of her reaction. Whatever. Judging by the number of wagons, it looks like you are transporting a massive stockpile of weapons. Why risk crossing the tundra for that? He felt no need to press her further. A journey to pay off debts, so that was the truth, which meant they intended to sell weapons to the kingdom locked in war with the Empire. The picture was clear. Mylena had not yet explained, but she still found herself nodding as if in agreement. Yes, but how did you? He did not need her to finish. His mind pieced it together in an instant. You said earlier the Empire is pressing hard with overwhelming numbers. That means they are not short on weapons, which leaves only the kingdom as the desperate buyer. When supply runs thin and demand soars, prices naturally skyrocket. I do not know the exact market value out there. But with this much cargo, it must be worth a fortune. Enough to risk crossing this frozen wasteland. Without even glancing at a map, Kettle spoke as if he could see it laid out before him. So you had no choice but to force your way through the ice-bound expanse. There is no other path into the kingdom without braving this land, is there? Your territory borders the Empire, does not it? She could not deny it. His deduction was flawless. Exactly. Yet the more she thought about it, the less it made sense. Her eyes lingered on him, filled with disbelief. No, that can't be. The legendary Barbarian is supposed to be nothing but an ignorant savage. Who are you really? Are you truly a barbarian? Mylena flinched suddenly, as though a chill had crawled up her spine, though she had not heard a sound. Outside, the carriage wheels rattled faster over the snowbound road. Someone was there. Kettle's tone remained calm, but his words carried weight. We have got uninvited guests following us. Outside, snow fell in a blinding curtain when suddenly, from the filthy slush beneath, a monster stirred to life. Its eyes snapped open, glowing with an eerie light, radiating pure hatred. The mercenaries froze as if turned to stone, their captain stammering, too shaken to form words. This is. Even Mylena paled, her face drained of all color. Kettle, however, remained perfectly calm, resting his chin on his hand and thought. A black slime, that is what they call it, is not it? Mylena trembled so violently her voice quivered. Why, yes. It is one of the creatures recorded in the archives. The archives? Kettle's curiosity flickered. She steadied her breath, forcing herself to explain. Many powerful adventurers have braved the ice-bound expanse over the years. Very few ever returned alive. But those who did left records of the monsters they encountered. Among them, the black slime was the most commonly cited. But, do you even know what it is, Kettle? Of course, he replied with complete confidence. They are chewy. Nice for a snack, actually. Tasty. Her eyes widened in horror. Wait, what, you eat them? He even offered earnestly, want to try? I can go catch a few. She nearly collapsed, stammering, no. Thank you. Before she could say more, a thunderous noise tore through the air. The grotesque slime outside let out a guttural roar, its entire form shuddering with fury. The mercenary captain stood frozen, paralyzed with fear. Mylena, realizing the danger, cried out, Kettle. But he remained silent, watching intently. Her panic deepened. Kettle. At last, his voice came, slow and composed. I made a pact with you. He closed his eyes, his expression strangely serene. I swore to protect your lives. That means I won't act unless the threat becomes truly dire. She stared at him, stunned, unable to grasp his meaning. What are you saying? He cast a languid glance toward the black slime. That thing, you can handle it yourselves. More importantly, I need to gauge this company's strength. The creature's shrieks shook the sky, finally snapping the mercenaries out of their stupor. Shields up, the captain barked. Yes, sir, a nearby subordinate obeyed instantly, raising his shield only to be slammed head on a heartbeat later. The impact sent him skidding across the snow, and the slime effortlessly flung him aside. Another fighter seized the moment, leaping onto its body and swinging his axe with a roar. A sharp crash followed, but he too was hurled violently through the air. Blood sprayed from his mouth in a scarlet arc as his weapon slipped from his grasp, the steel radiating with strange, sinister energy before clattering into the snow. Damn it, he coughed, his voice raw. What the hell is this thing? The black slime only raged harder, screeching at them with unrestrained madness. The captain quickly pieced it together and barked new orders. It can only move in a straight line, scatter and regroup. Understood, voices rang out at once. Got it, another shouted as they sprang into motion. The mercenary in the blue cloak charged forward, blade drawn. He timed his strike and slashed into the slime's body. The cut only enraged it further, its roar reverberating through the snowfield. Nearby, another fighter gathered energy into his weapon, hurling his spear with all his strength. In the blink of an eye, it pierced clean through the slime, leaving the squad in stunned silence. The monster's scream of agony shook the ground. "Don't stop now, press the attack," the spear wielder shouted, capitalizing on the moment. He slashed again, driving his blade deep. "Normal attacks won't work, aim for the core, it is hidden inside." The order rang clear, and every voice answered in unison. "Roger." Once they figured out its weakness, the mercenaries pressed their attack relentlessly. Finally, their captain raised his sword high and, with all the strength he could muster, drove it down in a decisive strike. The slime's crimson core shattered into fragments, and the monster writhed in agony on the ground before going still. They held their breath, watching for any sign of movement. When none came, relief washed over them. Cheers broke out. "We did it," someone shouted. From inside the carriage, Mylena's tense shoulders eased as she watched them celebrate. They had truly managed to bring it down. Kettle said nothing, merely gazing out at the scene in silence. The convoy resumed its journey, but not long after, another threat emerged: a massive snow wolf. Another beast halt. Weapons came free without hesitation. Blades flashed as they struck at the wolf, each swing driving it into a furious frenzy. Its pained howls echoed across the frozen expanse until, at last, their combined effort brought the creature crashing to the ground with a thunderous boom. Fear lingered, but victory lifted their spirits. "So this is the icebound expanse, huh? Doesn't seem that impressive, Captain." Maybe the rumors were blown out of proportion. The captain was less amused. His tone hardened. "Stay sharp. We have not even made it halfway." But unease was growing. One mercenary cast a sharp look toward the carriage. "Are we even sure that Barbarian's really as strong as the stories say? Legend or not, was not he just part of some tale about the old emperor? He has not lifted a finger this whole time." Kettle remained oblivious, unaware that suspicion was mounting. The rumor painted him as the apex predator of the icebound expanse. Yet here he was traveling alongside them, relying on their protection. Doubt turned to whispers of testing his strength. The captain's brow furrowed, uneasy, but before he could speak further, heavy footsteps pounded closer. Mylena frowned, startled by the sudden change. Kettle, as ever, said nothing. Then the blue-cloaked mercenary stepped forward. "Lady Mylena, I need a word with you." She blinked, confused. "Huh, about what?" He spoke with unnerving composure. "We have staked our lives on this mission. As mercenaries, we signed a contract with you. That is our duty. And we have honored it." Mylena nodded softly. "Yes, and I am truly grateful you accepted. I value that more than I can say." Inwardly, she reflected how others had fled the moment they heard the details. Without these men, the journey would never have even begun. But his next words froze her. "There is one thing that troubles me." His gaze sharpened. "That barbarian has not fought once, has he?" Caught off guard, Mylena faltered. Well. He cut her off, voice firm. "Which is why we want to confirm whether he really deserves the special treatment he has been given." Her heart wavered. She avoided their eyes. "Confirm? In what way?" At that moment, the captain arrived, his expression strained. "I tried to stop them, but they would not listen." Yet Kettle did not flare with anger at the challenge. His tone was steady, almost indifferent. "So you want to test me? Fine." But then he added, "Just not now." They blinked in surprise. "What?" Kettle's eyes shifted toward the horizon. "We already have guests waiting ahead." The mercenaries scoffed, one snapping, "What nonsense are you spouting?" A voice slithered through the air, dark and menacing, from directly behind them. "Ah, fragile little mortals from beyond. It has been far too long since I have had a proper meal. Struggle as much as you like, it only makes the flavor richer." The ground shook with its roar. Weapons came up in a frenzy as they turned, pale with dread. A colossal serpent loomed before them, its jaws yawning wide to reveal fangs like spears. Mylena screamed in terror, unable to stop herself. Her shrieks set everyone else on edge, their nerves fraying with each piercing cry. Kettle furrowed his brows, his voice cold and commanding as he addressed the beast before him. "Enough. They are my guests. Stand down and return, white serpent." The massive serpent turned its gaze on him, shock flashing in its reptilian eyes. Why are you here? Have you forgotten the laws of the frozen wastes? You left your tribe's lands long ago. That is none of your concern. Kettle cut it off sharply, irritation heavy in his tone. The white serpent sneered with disdain. Ridiculous. It reared back, its voice a thunderous roar. I am the white serpent, barbarian. How dare you presume to command me? I was promised eternity. But Kettle was no meek opponent. His stance tightened, his fist cocked back as he snarled, you itching for a beating. His punch slammed into the serpent's scaled body, the impact echoing like a thunderclap. The white serpent let out a furious roar. Cyclones burst into existence all around them, conjured by its rage, battering the surroundings with violent winds. The mercenaries clenched their jaws, doing everything they could to withstand the onslaught. The creature's power only grew stronger, more oppressive with every passing second. Melina raised her hand desperately, straining to hold back the storm. Her voice trembled with worry. My lady. Kettle's expression hardened when he saw the beast pressing its attack without restraint. His voice turned to steel. So you are the kind that only listens after a beating. Melina dropped to her knees, crying out, Kettle. But he did not turn back. Determination blazed in his eyes. I will finish this quickly. Don't worry. Each of his steps struck the ground like an earthquake, the earth quaking beneath his weight. Kettle hurled himself forward, fist drawn back, ready to deliver another crushing blow. A blinding flash of light erupted mid-battle, so bright it swallowed the sky. The world froze in stunned silence. No one knew how much time had passed, but when their senses returned, the white serpent was already subdued. The mercenaries fell to their knees, shame burning in their voices. We committed an unforgivable sin. Please, forgive us. Kettle's reply was calm, dismissive. It is fine. Trusting a stranger does not come easy. The caravan resumed its journey across the frozen land. The bitter cold made the butler tremble uncontrollably, his coughing echoing through the wagon. The sound drew Kettle's attention. Thinking about it now, he said evenly, I do have a question. Melina blinked in surprise. What is it? Kettle studied her closely, his tone turning serious. Judging from your clothes and the way you speak, you are not just some ordinary representative of your family. Why risk yourself on a dangerous expedition like this? Melina let out a soft sigh. Ah, I see. After a moment, she spoke. I am the first daughter of Velika, one of Lord Kasik Akasha's concubines. Kettle's brow rose slightly. Concubine, you mean? A secondary wife? She nodded without hesitation. Yes. Her voice grew quieter as she recounted her past. Her mother had come here through a political marriage, only to be cast aside. A powerless woman. Abandoned and forgotten. Kettle felt a pang of sympathy. I understand. As she spoke, her hands clenched tightly. For my mother and me, our title as family meant nothing. In truth, we were treated like servants. Her eyes dropped to the floor, heavy with shame. I did not mean to say so much. After a pause, she added, I volunteered for this expedition. Kettle tilted his head. You did. She nodded firmly. Yes, even though it is dangerous, someone has to set an example. She did not dare meet his gaze. A faint smirk tugged at his lips. I see. You are sharper than I thought. Her brows knitted in confusion. Huh. He regarded her with an appraising look. And you have got ambition too. Greedy, are not you? Melina faltered, her voice soft. You. A sudden noise outside cut her short. Kettle turned his head immediately, his senses alert. Melina also noticed. They are here. The mercenaries outside gasped as they laid eyes on the scene before them. Grass. Where there should have been only endless snow, fresh green grass spread across the frozen land. The butler bowed deeply, gratitude etched across his face. Thank you so much, Kettle. Kettle, ever composed, asked with a touch of concern, and how will you make your return? Melina pondered for a moment before answering, we will pass through the empire. Kettle did not hesitate to point out the reality. Since you have already sold off your weapons, you are no longer carrying contraband. Crossing the border should not be too difficult. Melina lifted her eyes to him and whispered softly, Kettle. She paused, then pressed on. Earlier you said I was intelligent and ambitious. What exactly did you mean by that? She waited intently for his answer. Kettle's gaze held steady as he explained, I meant exactly what I said. You are clever, and you have ambition. Your family once commanded respect, but now it is falling apart from lack of funds. Even as the daughter of a concubine, if you take matters into your own hands and carve out a path to save your house from ruin. Tell me, who will the retainers put their faith in, who will they follow? Your true goal is to claim real power within your family, is not it? Her silence lingered, her expression unreadable. Kettle narrowed his eyes. Did I miss the mark? Inside, Melina felt her heart tighten. A perfect answer. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes, and murmured, "Number." Kettle's thoughts echoed her own. An accurate response. It is only natural for the child of a concubine to embrace dangerous trials for even a chance at succession. Melina looked at him differently now. This barbarian is sharp, not like those half-baked men who think too highly of themselves. Admiration began to stir in her heart. His strength alone, being able to defeat the white serpent without so much as a scratch, was enough to shake her. If I could bring that kind of power under my banner. Her thoughts raced before she finally spoke. Kettle, if you truly intend to leave the frozen wastes one day, why not come with me? The proposal caught him off guard, but his reply was blunt and unwavering. I will have to refuse. There are still things I must do here. Melina nodded, her voice calm but her hands clenched tight. I understand. Then, she produced a necklace with great care, holding it out to him. Will you accept this? Her eyes lingered on him as she added, if you ever leave and come to the Akasha family, show them this token. Kettle chuckled lightly, his tone relaxed. If this is a gift, then I will gladly accept it. Before parting, the butler bowed once more. Thank you, Kettle. I hope one day we meet again. Kettle's nod was firm, certain. We will. He stood there, watching them disappear into the distance. Time passed swiftly. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had slipped away. The frozen wastes stretched endlessly around him. At last, after long years of waiting, every condition had been met. The system's voice echoed ceaselessly in his ears. Mission number 784 complete. Rewards distributed. All conditions fulfilled. You may now leave the frozen wastes. Kettle strode forward, pride radiating from every step. Finally, my first step. Excitement surged through him, a fire he could no longer contain. At last, he was setting foot into the fantastical world he had always dreamed of. Kettle blended into the wilderness, his expression serene, his entire being savoring the moment. The crisp fragrance of grass and trees mingled with the faint musk of beasts. The forest air was fresh and vibrant, alive with the calls and movements of countless creatures. With his eyes closed, Kettle absorbed it all, the delicate trace of a river's clarity. The subtle fragrances he could never have sensed back in the frozen wastes. Perfect, truly refreshing. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open, turning sharply to the side. There, towering above the tree line, stood a massive ice spire. Kettle's eyes widened in shock. A relic of the frozen wastes. What the hell is it doing here? Before him stretched endless mountains and emerald forests bathed in golden sunlight. It was a breathtaking vision, this fantastical world he had dreamed of. A world brimming with mysteries he had once thought forever beyond his reach. Though his beginning here had been far from ideal, he had managed to endure. I survived, did not I? A daring thought sparked in his mind. From now on, I will live to the fullest. Magic and swordsmanship, I will embrace it all. He muttered under his breath, wonder flickering in his eyes. Dragons and elves. So it really is a fantasy world. Step by step, he pressed forward, thoughts swirling. If not for my obsession, I would have died long ago. The frozen wastes were hell itself, a place where clinging to a fragile will to live was not enough to keep you breathing. Then, a strange light flared ahead, tugging at his curiosity. Kettle caught sight of wandering spirits, unusual, shimmering entities. He sensed the gathering of life force, a quiet convergence. After pondering for a moment, his lips curled with certainty. It must be a village. Finally, I have found signs of civilization in this world. Before him were Greta and a frail, white-haired girl, curled up and shivering in the snow. Kettle halted, a memory stirring. I once tried teaching those dim-witted tribesmen, those fools who thought burrowing into snowdrifts was shelter, about the importance of building proper dwellings. But all I got were blank stares and vacant eyes. He closed his own eyes now, his expression turning solemn. I can still picture the sturdy dwellings of mankind. But how should I introduce myself? Should I simply say hello, or maybe just ask plainly, where am I? With that, Kettle strode boldly through the verdant forest, reminding himself, no matter what, I should act with courtesy. Golden sunlight pierced the canopy of ancient trees, spilling across the clearing. And then suddenly a hand appeared from nowhere. It was the village elder. He appeared with a stern expression, his voice booming as he declared, "Hear me, all elves, from this day forth, this place shall be our new home." The words drew everyone together. Faces brightened, their expressions open and relieved as they gathered to listen. Standing atop a rise, the elder raised his hand and continued, "Explore everything, my people. This land is ours now." A young man stepped forward, calling out respectfully, "Elder." The old elf cast him a sidelong glance. "What is it?" Hesitating, the youth finally asked, "Is this place truly safe?" The elder nodded firmly. "It is safe." Turning back to address the others, he explained, "This land is remote, far from human reach." "Yes, I know that, but the frozen wastes are right next to us," the youth admitted, scratching his head with unease. The elder's gaze sharpened. "You are worried monsters from the frozen wastes might appear, are not you?" The young man gave an awkward nod. It is too close." The elder softened his tone, offering reassurance. "There is nothing to fear. No creature has emerged from the frozen wastes for 1,000 years. And besides, we have erected a barrier." He looked out over the forest, 3 maps unfurled in his hands, his voice steady. "A concealment spell cloaks our presence, making this place appear like any ordinary forest. It took us months to construct it, restoring lost spirit magic with great effort. As long as the barrier holds, no outsider can find us, and even if monsters come, they will be kept away." The elder's thoughts drifted to Marsaria Hashion Karusha. His voice carried conviction. "We still have our queen. No monster from the frozen wastes could ever lay a hand on her." At that moment, Kettle appeared. He reached out, his hand slipping through the thin, unseen veil. He paused, frowning. "I think I just tore something. What is here?" Pushing forward, he muttered to himself, "But really, how much farther do I have to walk?" Then he froze. Golden hair shimmered before his eyes. A delicate green dress swayed in the breeze. There, standing amidst the vast forest, was a small girl. Kettle's breath caught, and he exclaimed, "Ah, an elf!" His eyes widened in awe. A real elf. A thrill ran through him, the kind only a lifelong dreamer could feel. Elves, one of the quintessential races of every fantasy world. A grin spread across his face. "Didn't think I would run into one this soon. Fortune's finally on my side. All that struggling to survive, it was worth it." But the girl herself was trembling, her tiny hands clutching at her dress as she spun about in panic. "I am scared. Where am I? What do I do? I have wandered too far." Then, with wide, innocent eyes, she looked up at Kettle. In an instant, innocence gave way to fear. To her, the towering man before her seemed like a demon. "Hello, little one," Kettle said, his voice unintentionally grave. The girl's body locked up, her eyes frozen wide with terror. A heartbeat later, she collapsed to the ground, fainting from fright. The forest suddenly echoed with a loud noise, sending a flock of birds scattering in fright. Kettle, startled, tried to support the little girl who had fainted from sheer terror. Then his vision dimmed for a second as he muttered in shock, Foam bubbled at the corners of her mouth as she lay limp in his arms. Kettle grew flustered. She fainted before I even had the chance to talk to her properly. Should I take her back to her village? His thoughts raced. In mythology, elves were always portrayed as a peaceful race, welcoming, kind, and gentle. With a smug little touch, he rubbed his nose and thought proudly, if I bring back this unconscious child, maybe they will welcome me warmly. They will probably be friendly too. I wonder what that would feel like. A grin tugged at his lips. I am looking forward to it, he whispered. Without another word, he scooped the girl up into his arms and started walking. But he had not gone far before a cry rang out, nearby. No way. How could a human be here? No, my child. A group of fierce-looking elves charged forward with weapons in hand, shouting, Who are you? How did you break through the barrier? Kettle froze. This is not what I pictured at all. A woman fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably as she cried out, My child. The village elder arrived at the scene, his face filled with shock. Impossible. This place is supposed to be untouchable, a sanctuary no human could ever reach. There is a barrier. How did one get through? Someone by his side spoke up, "Elder, the barrier has a breach." But the old man shook his head stubbornly. "No, Her Majesty the Queen." The other interrupted quickly, "The Queen only left temporarily to scout the terrain." Their eyes fell on Kettle, and the shouting grew harsh. "I am not an enemy. I am just. Bastard, if you do not return that child, we will hunt you to the ends of the earth." The elder stood frozen for a moment, his thoughts grim. Our sanctuary has been exposed. He recalled the ancient enchantment they had painstakingly restored. That barrier was forged with primeval elven magic. Even adults could not breach it. If it has been broken, that means humanity came fully prepared. How long have they been tracking us? Kettle broke into a cold sweat, his eyes wide with disbelief. Do they think I am a kidnapper? He glanced down at the trembling girl in his arms as she whimpered in fear, her tiny body shivering and tears spilling down her cheeks. Tears trickled down the girl's cheeks in two thin streams. Moments later, her eyes fluttered open, wide and shimmering as she looked at Kettle. He gently set her down and spoke softly, "Go on. Go back to your family." The girl hesitated, stealing one last glance at him. But the figure she saw standing before her was no savior, it was a demon in human form. The sight made her jolt with terror, her face draining of all color. Then, with a strangled cry, she burst into sobs and bolted straight into her parents' arms. Kettle froze, dumbfounded. The hell? Is my face really that scary? The realization hit him like a hammer. I thought I looked decent enough back in the frozen wastes. But this, damn, that stings. Awkwardly, he raised a hand in a half-hearted wave, forcing a crooked smile. "Well, anyway, I have returned the girl. As you can see, elves, I am not your enemy." But the elder's voice thundered over him. "The hostage has been released." Bows snapped up in unison, a forest of arrows trained on him. "Everyone attack, release the arrows." Kettle's jaw dropped in disbelief. "Wait, what? Did nobody even hear a word I just said?" Kettle's face darkened as a thought struck him. These elves are even more savage than I imagined. Weren't elves, according to myth. He had always pictured something noble and honest, peace-loving race, devoted to nature and harmony. But the elves standing before him now were nothing like that. They were fierce, violent. Then again, elves were a people who lived in the wilds. And in nature, survival belonged only to the strong. Peace was never guaranteed. In that sense, their brutality made a twisted kind of sense. Kettle stood motionless, indifferent, as arrows rained down on him like a storm. He barely blinked and murmured to himself, "So, this is reality, huh?" When the elves saw not a single scratch on him, their eyes went wide. What sort of artifact is he using? No human could withstand that. He must have a limit, keep attacking. But Kettle calmly stepped forward, raised his hand, and swept it outward with a dismissive flick. "Enough. Calm yourselves." His tone dropped, serious now, as he summoned a force of dark power. The ground trembled as the raw, violent energy swelled outward. Then it erupted, exploding with a deafening roar. The young warriors shielding their eyes could hardly keep them open, their sight drowned in blinding light. Panic spread among the others. "Deploy defenses, quickly." But Kettle's power was overwhelming. Barriers shattered like glass. In an instant, the blast ripped through everything, hurling elves through the air, scattering them among the debris and dirt. The black energy swirled and condensed into a massive circle, pulsing as if it were preparing to unleash its full, devastating might. The elder, trembling, gripped his staff tighter and stumbled backward. His voice cracked in horror. What? What is this?" Then, just as suddenly, the energy dissipated. Kettle stood tall in the crater left behind, his voice ringing out, "I am not your enemy." He let out a weary sigh. "Damn, maybe I underestimated my own strength." Then he raised his voice again. "Elves." But before he could finish, a flaming arrow whistled through the air. It struck him square in the head, detonating with a violent explosion. The elder and his companions froze, stunned at the sight. From above, a figure descended, her long braided hair whipping in the wind. She landed gracefully on a boulder, slender legs steady and sure. It was Marsaria Hashian Karusha. At once, the elves cried out in unison, "Your Highness! The queen of the Leaf clan Marsaria Hashian Karusha." She stood tall, regal and fierce, her voice sharp. "What happened here?" The elder quickly bowed and answered, "A human attacked us." At that, Marsaria's expression darkened. "So, the time has come." Her gaze swept across the gathered elves, her tone grave. "Even this place is no longer safe.